isolated, and you really can't create the range of motion necessary to get the fullness or the volume of your movements. So, with that said, we want to increase the volume of movement by increasing the range of movement in our body, dimensionally and anatomically, taking our body into positions that maybe we're not used to. Whether it's a cross-legged position, so many people have a little difficulty finding that position because you go into a cross-legged position, the knees don't bend. The knees don't bend because we don't know how to release the tension in the leg to squat down or to sit. And, how far can you go? Now, you only have to go down to this, because if you go to any lower than that, you can't get out of the stance, really. I mean, you could sit like this, but that actually is not really what we're doing. We're using the cross-legged stance as a transition, okay? So now when we turn like this, or we step forward with the legs, it's really taking us in that direction. So one of the things that we want to do is come up and time this. Now, to sort of not increase the width of the movement, we want to increase essentially the length of the movement by turning the body. So you want a full circle. And we step through with that same motion. So that cutting action can be both, depending on the form, from the back leg pushing or pushing. This one you're not pushing, you're leading and following, or stepping through and stepping through. See, so different styles, different maneuvers have different leg work. But all of it is tracking to your center, right? Here's your center. Now, you don't want your sword to be over here. It will be there if you don't turn, okay? If you come up on the other side, it will be there if you don't relax your shoulder. And relaxing shoulder means that your hand goes over your head. So tracking the movement using this vertical line, which is through the nose in the front, down through your sternum over here, and in the back, utilizing a tracking of the spine. So, you're not going to cut through here. You have to turn and avoid the sword and come through here. So if you just did this with your arm without the apparatus, the sword, then if you can't create it without the sword, you can't create it with the sword, because that you just added another load to your body, which is holding this. So if you're holding this and it's even on its 1.5 pounds, it seems like a load way out here because of the way it's extended from the body. So it does take a bit of strength to do that. But how much strength it does, your body in the beginning doesn't really realize or know how much. So you have to go through a process. And as you start to sort of delete the excessiveness or start to figure out how much strength and force you need, then your arm doesn't stay as tight, or the shoulder doesn't stay as tight, or the shoulder blades and so forth that are involved in that shoulder girdle motion starts to increase its range of motion. So to increase range of motion, if you did this with your arm, that would increase range of motion in the forward direction, right? So that would help you turn. If you did this, which is essentially a giant figure eight, you would start to increase the range, and increase in range means there's a stretch to it, right? So that stretch is just to allow you to accommodate the movement. And once your body starts to free up, then the joints and the musculature involved with that motion will start to become um, more flexible and pliable and adaptable to what you're trying to do. So your target positions are your center line. You have all these sort of geometric shapes that you have in the form angular positions. You know, we always talk about angles and direction. So if you can kind of understand that when we do the sword form, you'll recognize many of the things, you know, to get the sword level, right? So you just see what I just did. I just turned like this. So you really don't need to swing the sword to cut. If I go like this and I just, like a helicopter, you will see that I'm spinning and you get a sword slice. But you have a combination of this and the turn, right? So that gives you some control. But we don't go always in one direction. We actually go back in the other direction. Back to the same concept of right and left. So, you know, you only can move in one direction before you have to go back in the other direction. If we only go in one direction, that becomes excessive and extreme. So we don't want to be excessive and extreme because that would defy some of the concepts of Tai Chi. We want to be balanced. So if you're in the balance of motion, then you should kind of go in two directions. Go to the right, go to the left, go to the left, go to the right. You go forward, you go back. It's just the nature of everything that we do. You can only go so far before you have to come back. Some people never come back when they, you know, if you're on a journey and you move to another state, I guess you don't come back. But the thing is, with this, we go this way, we have to go this way. We go down, we have to go up. We go out, we go out, we go down, we go down. Okay. But, you know, don't bear in mind that most of the movements are done with our right arm. So all the right arm is doing is channeling it in directions. All right. So let's go through the sword sequence and see where we go with it. Right? So we're here. We're in the parallel stance preparation. Step up and push. Turn the corner. Grasp the sparrow's tail. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Press down, kick up, switch feet, down, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1. Oh, sorry. 1, 2. That's the same as the other. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, like any other forms, there's a lot of repeat motions that are sort of similar and compatible. So as your body starts to, adapt, it starts to recognize similar transitions, and then that's where the accuracy and the consistency of those motions become part of your body. And once it becomes recognized, it actually becomes more innate. It becomes part of the subconscious understanding. And all of these ideas that we talk about is trying to get the body to cooperate with what the mind is telling it to do. So that's one of the advantages of this type of a exercise. Why do you need to learn? And this is something that's happened over time with a lot of the traditional martial arts, that they kind of dummy things down and they take out some of the critical things because it's so hard to learn. But, I really don't believe in doing that, because you're compromising, the value of what you're doing in the learning phases and the ability to evolve. If you think that you're good enough, then you will never experience what it is to be better than that. So how can you reference something that you don't know? It's really tough. So when you start learning this, why did I spend, all of my adult life and most of my youth doing this type of a thing, focusing on body movement and the ideas behind it? Only because I recognize the changes and the evolution of movement and understanding. So, if you go through that process and that journey being so long, you would really discover so much more than, um, I won't even say the average person, even teachers that do this, that don't do it on the same level that I assume that I'm doing it. And I'm probably one of the, rare individuals that actually have stayed with something. A lot of my friends that I grew up with can't believe I'm still doing this. But the thing is, it's just something that always has interested me. And as things have evolved, especially within the last 25 years, before that, I taught for my teacher. And teaching for my teacher is not exactly the same as teaching, for myself, in a sense that my teacher's gone now, so I really don't have, the resources or the backup of having him here. So, when you're on your own, you have to stand on your own 2 feet and you have to just figure it out. So that's the journey I experienced on the second part of the road. Because the first side, you have the support, you have all that. It's sort of like a child growing up, and then the parents, is not there to support you. How do you survive? It kind of goes both ways. Parents never think the kids can survive on their own, but they actually will do okay. On the other side of it, um, if the child or the child reaching adulthood isn't really secure on their own feet, they're always a little bit wary about what's going to happen, if my parents are not here. So, it is kind of that thing that is a psychological barrier in some ways. So, being a teacher is the same way, especially traditional arts. Once your teacher is not there, who are you going to ask when you have a question? But you'll figure that out as a teacher and anyone else that's actually doing this, because it's more than just absorbing everything. You have to have a mind of your own, and if you don't have that mind, you have to develop that mind. So as you watch this and you understand what you're going through, you're reaching a level as a student that you have to actually figure out some of the things yourself. And you figure it out by not relying on just one source of information. You have to have a mind that's open enough to understand sort of the depth of what you're trying to do and the perception of information. We perceive information based on how we think it's interpreted, and it's interpreted based on your level of understanding. So that applies to this. This is really harder to develop insights, other than that, you're chopping and so forth, but the body form and the understanding really comes from your empty hand form. Your empty hand form is the foundation to these movements, and your empty hand form is what you need to perfect, at different stages and different levels in order to understand what else is involved. So, as things evolve, that's what our logo stands for. It's a cycle. You go around and around and around. Nobody knows exactly how many times you're going to go around, because it really depends on how much effort you put in and how much time you put in. But if you don't put any time into it, that circle stops, and it actually starts to go backwards. And when it starts to go backwards, the most advanced ideas that you may have will leave first, because they're not embedded in your mind or your body enough for you to recognize, what you were trying to discover. So that's really, the sadness of what happens to people that kind of leave this and quit. So, and once you leave this and quit, what ends up happening is it goes away just as fast as it, actually it goes away faster than it came. Anyways, on that note, what time is it now? We still have time to go through this another time. So it's taking the form, and if you have a section that you're not too sure of, you can actually maybe let us know that there's a piece of the form that we want to see over and over again. This part of it is really similar to what we know in the empty hand form. Here's similar to brush knee, and the rest of it is sequence. So all we have are actually individual pieces, a unit. These are all postures. You capture the imagery of a position and you can see the body form. That's what we're doing. So you can see there's a lot of postures that just are replicated. So is there a consistency of your movements? See, fluid movement isn't always the best way to understand final positions. You have to finish the position in order to get the body to recognize. That's muscle memory, that's sequential memory, that's actually taking your level of understanding to a whole new level of training, because the proprioceptive sensory system has to have something to recognize and define. And if you have these positions, then wherever it shows up, it's exactly the same. So that's what a consistent motion becomes. So I'm trying to show you what the body goes through as an alignment. So that's what you would see if this form was put into a book. And every position would be photographed, and you put them in an order, and then you put the text underneath it, the captions underneath to kind of describe the posture, and then the information that you have explaining sort of the steps and the transitions, which is really hard to do in writing and in text, because sometimes to explain a simple movement could be so difficult to do because of the nuances in a transition. And then someone reading that and trying to follow it would be kind of taking that text and imagining it in motion. I mean, it's probably easier to take information, imagining it as a concept, than to take some of that information and transfer it into what your body's supposed to be doing. So there is, it's much more complicated to learn like that. So video actually is probably the best thing to teach, or actually give to the viewer what you're trying to demonstrate. So that's why a lot of sports pros use video to recap, plays, or to review what was done wrong at certain phases. But it does take time, because if you're a professional and you're watching those videos to see what you may be doing wrong, it's really another form of support. They do that with a simple thing as throwing a lasso. They would check the direction of movement and the size of the circle, and when you have to release the elbow in order for you to put that ring around a post, because everything is spatial and everything is timing and release. So that, a discus thrower, all of these things are actions that has to be very precise. So this is something that involves similar ideas. But on that note, I showed you the sort of the pictures of the positions. Hopefully that will be helpful. You can actually go through it again and again to see if you're doing the same thing. So on that note, I'll see you next time. It's time, so till then, I'll have a good day, and as I said, Happy New Year, and hopefully at some point during the year you'll be back. I'll have something new for you about what we're doing here shortly. I'll keep you in suspense. Okay, talk to you later.